In the criminal justice system, some teenagers and some adults have been forced to confess to a crime that they haven't done, which led to a false conviction, and some of them have been serving time in prison for a crime that they didn't do, and now they're just rotting in the system. And some of them have been able to been exonerated, but others have still been locked up, and they are waiting for their release date, and some of them, they may not have been able to get out.
That's something that's just been starting to happen, or has that been like in the system for a long period of time? Because personally, I only know about the snitching part, like when people start snitching on others to like get a deal and stuff like that. But I've never heard like somebody forcing someone to actually say they committed a crime.
The latest that I've known was about the Central Park 5, which was in the 1980s. But I think there was a case where someone was convicted in 2001, I believe, and this individual was interrogated for more than 8 hours, and she finally pleaded guilty for murdering someone who she didn't actually do, and she has been incarcerated or has been sentenced to life, but has, I believe, a 40-year for parole.
So it kind of sounds like this is less of like, what's it called? Judge. This is more on the police, like the detectives who are like interrogating, right? So is it like strategic? Is this like an on-purpose thing that they do just to get a confession?
I was actually kind of reading about this. There is like a type of interrogation that is conducted by like detectives or police that puts so much pressure on the suspect that it literally puts them under like so much psychological like stress that it forces them to just admit to the crime even though they're innocent or whatever, if they're innocent or not. But it's called like a raid, I believe, interrogation, where they start off with asking whether it's a irrelevant or relevant questions, just to like they examine their suspect first. They try to look for any tells or signs that they're lying or anything. And once they get that sudden suspicion that like, oh, this person definitely seems like they're lying, they turn up the intensity and they start being harsher. They make the interrogation much more longer, and it just puts a lot of like exhaustion on that person. The person wants to, obviously get over with the interrogation, so they end up confessing to a crime. Or also, I know that police are permitted to lie in interrogations. They will promise their suspect that, oh, it's okay, you will be let go, you'll go home after this. It's, just tell me, what I need to hear. So it kind of is, yeah, so they end up like convincing the suspect to falsely confess to whatever crime. It's so whack, right?
A part of me is like, dang, that sucks, but another part of me is like, I wonder what the ratio is to like actual inmates who were rightfully convicted because of that strategy versus not. Because another part is like, I kind of have to understand that if it's their job to find out who did it, and they only have, I don't know, maybe like a few suspects, and this is their prime suspect, like how do you go about ethically getting the truth, and how do you know if it's the truth if there's like little to no evidence?
Yeah, that like kind of makes sense, because most of like a case is mostly about evidence and like some of the witnesses. Like if you just have witnesses, it's like a he said, she said, these as type of stuff. It's not really putting forth of the evidence that has been found on putting them into saying that they're guilty or not. But like one thing that really strikes me, if you are like going through a murder case, like something like that, don't you have to go to jail? Don't you have to go to court in front of a jury, so where they say you're either not guilty or guilty? And why haven't they seen any evidence that leads up to a point of view? if this is just a eyewitness, because eyewitnesses don't always have to see the same thing. Like they could see something else and be like, oh, they did it, and just not even remember, because not a human mind can remember everything, every single detail or everything. That's what my idea is. You need to have evidence, like solid hard evidence.
Psychologically, eyewitnesses are not a good source of evidence. Like you said, you need to have cold hard facts, but other than the fact that like the human mind can't remember everything, you are very, very influenced by your emotions. So if you were to witness this gruesome crime, you're not going to remember every detail if you were upset, if you were angry, if you were sad. So especially in the case of like interrogation, using eyewitness testimony over evidence simply because you do not have enough evidence can lead to many wrongful convictions, because a person could be mad at this person for something that they did in that life affecting their judgment and stuff. The human mind is too biased to give a truthful analysis of certain events, basically.
That makes me wonder, Felix, like specifically if there's like, you know, because I agree with you for the most part, because if there's like one or two, what if there's like a significant number of eyewitnesses? Does that then kind of shift it if you can kind of piece together a story? You know what I mean?
At that point, if there's a significant amount of people, then you would have to look for similarities in story. Obviously, there are going to be some people who lie. There's going to be some people who don't remember stuff. But if you have a giant amount of people who remember a similar detail, obviously that's going to be more close to the truth than having 2 or 3 people who have different stories, basically.
That's legit.
So like in many crimes like that, and they just have eyewitnesses, don't they have like a sketch artist for them to like sketch out? Like
it kind of sounds like in these situations, like if you have to reach a forced admission, it sounds like you're on like zero, like not zero evidence, but the evidence is if you don't have a lot of suspects and like you're kind of on their last straw and they have to convict someone. I also like, what was the crime that you said it was from the 1980s? The
Central Park 5.
So what happened in that? Like what happened there?
A white female jogger was sexually assaulted and was she was raped, sexually assaulted. People, or like it was said that this group of people, the Central Park 5, like beat her up and stuff like that, and she was left there for dead, but luckily she did survive. But yeah, there were the teenagers at the time, they were the interrogators wanted them to point fingers at each other so they could all be convicted of the crime.
Wait, but like what was crazy, because it was a documentary on Netflix. I think if I remember this correctly, they were interrogated without an adult. They were minors. They were put through like those hours of interrogation and they were forced to admit it. So also in the court, because it's common for like, you know, people who falsely confess that they know that they're innocent, so they believe that in the court that they will, you know, their truth will come to light. But in the court, there was at the scene of the crime, there was DNA samples taken, right? And so the samples taken, it belonged to none of those 5 boys that, you know, that were suspects. However, the prosecutor claimed that there was a 6th person that was the only person who ejaculated at the scene, and that DNA belonged to them, and those 5 boys were still included.
Because they can legally lie, they got away with it.
I'm for what I know, there was no other evidence or information that connected to her claim, which was insane, because like as the moment that the suspects, you know, falsely confess, everything is turned pretty much against them, no matter how much evidence that contradicts, you know, the facts of the crime. So I want to find like a solution to prevent this type of, you know, unfortunate results.
I personally feel like there's no way to prevent it. If like someone, as you say, like a detective feels like this person did it, they probably won't need the evidence. They'll go off of an eyewitness and try to do something that allows them to say like, oh, they did it, so they're guilty, and put people in jail for no reason, prison for no reason. Like, you can't say like, oh, we need to like, we want this to go away, but this, like, it's so hidden that many people don't even know about it. Like, if you go to the streets and ask 5 random people about it, how many out of that 5 people are really going to know about it? That's why, because it's so hidden, people don't really know. Many people don't know how many false claims there are, false evidence. Many people still get framed till this day, and they still blame it on the person that it was framed on, instead of going deeper in the research and deeper in the evidence. That's something you have to always remember too in the criminal justice, because once the police think like they have them, like, oh yeah, we did it, case closed.
Low key, doesn't this boil down to humans being like scummy and like selfish? I only say that because the like, if you look at it, right, whoever side. I also, other question was like if there's any like recent cases, but that's not, like, if you're innocent, right, and like I'm trying to think of like the mindset you would have to take on. You're like, I know I didn't do anything, but this cop or this detective is telling me that I did. But they're telling me I want to go home. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm stressed out. And they're like, you did the crime. Tell us, da 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 da. I just want to go home. Like, at some point you become so over it, you know? Like, there's like a thing where if you make too many decisions in one day, then by the time nightfall hits, your brain's just over it. Like, I think, Felix, you said that, right? Like, our emotions are so, like, they impact us so much that at one point we want to self-preservation kicks in, and we're like, whatever, I'll say whatever to keep myself safe. And then on the detective side, I think this person did it 100%, or I need to find someone. Self-preservation, I like my job. I don't want to get falsely accused. I don't want the media to be pissed off at me for doing something wrong. I have to pin it on them. So really, on both sides, I'm gonna side with an innocent person, but the cop doesn't know that they're innocent. So I feel like it's very hard to weigh, just ethically and morally, because we know it's wrong to do that, but we also know it's wrong to let a criminal go free. But we almost never know if that person is innocent until like years after the initial what is it called, like, case is presented. I don't know, like, especially since I don't know the most recent situation.
You're innocent until you're proven guilty, and that is like, so it's like, say, like, for example, you get told you need to come down here for this, blah blah, you don't know nothing about it, so you're innocent, right? Or maybe you do. We don't know that. That's like not our jobs to know that. Like, as us, how are we gonna know? We're not like no clues people. We're not gonna go around finding secret messages. We're not Scooby-Doo. But like, that's the police job. But like, how can they put somebody in jail if they didn't do it and want to put it? I feel like that's personally biased in a type of sense, because they put their own beliefs before what they actually should be doing.
Speaking of bias, cheese and crackers, this just goes back to the whole, like, if cops are in charge, like, you know what I mean? Then you have initial bias. And like 8 out of 10 times, guess who's the person? Guess who's being interrogated? Like, Pia, tell me if I'm wrong. Would any of the Central 5 kids happen to have been, I don't know, a person of color?
You are exactly right. At the scene, I don't remember exactly, but a whole group of Black and I think Hispanic kids were at the park, and the person who was in charge of the case said to look out for the Black and Mexican kids. So one of them, Corey, I forgot his last name, he wasn't even at the scene, and he was trying to support his friend while he was being interrogated, and they pulled Corey aside for him to be interrogated, and he signed a statement that confessed that he was part of it. That's why he got incarcerated for, I think, 6.
Did they ever find the real people who did it?
Yeah, they did eventually.
Oh, good. I was gonna say that would be dog water. Ew. Sorry, that makes me itch. Oh my gosh.
And also, this case is definitely a case of both the racial injustice in the court system and with the whole forced confession thing. Like, if you were to ask someone, like, hey, what's a case that makes you think about like how impartial the justice system is to people of color, people will bring up the Central Park Five, because those were just a group of people of color, two of the most discriminated against groups, racial groups in America, being prosecuted for something that they did not commit. And I think they only were they only got apologies for it within the last 10 years. I think it might even been like 5 years ago, because I remember this news very, very recently. So yeah.
Quick question. Oh frick, what was it? They weren't actually, like, none of those kids were actually involved, is what they found out, right? Okay, just clarifying.
Okay, so Felix and Jeanne. I'm not used to saying her name like that, so I'm just gonna say April. Got the final words, and we want to know your opinions. We want to hear your thoughts. Like, what would happen if this was you in the situation and you were innocent and they were forcing you to say that you did it? Like, how would you feel? How would you feel if that was your best friend? How would you feel if that was your mom? Okay? But if you want to see more of our lovely faces, don't forget to follow at Project Batu and at Club Stride. Don't forget to do it on Instagram and Facebook, and we're coming out soon. So don't forget to tag, share, and like, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye guys. Thank you.
Bye.